This video is a part of a series all about learning React. Today we're going to talk about JSX. JSX is one of the most important things to learn when it comes to React. So what is it? It stands for JavaScript XML. But furthermore, it's an extension of JavaScript that allows you to write HTML within JavaScript. But what exactly is HTML? HTML is the bones of your web page. It consists of tags that tell your browser how to display content. Every single web page that you navigate to consists of HTML at the root of it. The difference between HTML and JSX. Within JSX, you can use HTML and JavaScript together. JSX has to be transpiled into HTML. You have to use some sort of tool like Babel that will then transpile your JSX into HTML. But that's not something that you really have to worry about on the day-to-day. It's most important when you're setting up your project, but we can go into that further in another video. JSX and HTML have slightly different syntax, which we'll go into now. Here we have a very simple web page that I've created. On the left is our code, and on the right is our browser, which is displaying our code. You can see here that I have a bunch of JSX written. Within JSX, all HTML tags are accessible. Divs, a body tag, header, footer, lists, anything that you can use in HTML, you can also use in JSX. Now, if we go over to our browser and we open up the DevTools, we can actually see this being compiled from JSX into HTML. Let's go here and inspect this header tag. You can see here that it's being compiled into this HTML. You can also see this div with an ID of root that's at the top. That's actually how our React is being appended to the browser, but let's talk about that more in a different video. Let's focus on JSX syntax today. So over here, just to test, if we throw in another div, I'll just write, hi, we are testing. And if we just inspect this, we can see it's right here in the DOM. JSX has the concept of self-closing tags. Here we have an opening tag for this div and a closing tag for this div. A self-closing tag is just one tag that both opens and closes. I'll show you an example in this list view. Say I wanted to add another list item, but for some silly reason I didn't want to add any words in the list item. I create li the same way that I would open the tag, and then I would do the closing, then I would close the tag as well. Save, we go over and hot reloads, you can see that there's another li in here. And another interesting thing to note is that it actually is being rendered into proper HTML because of the fact that it's being compiled. You could do it with really any tag. So if I put in, I don't know, an h2 tag, you can see here an h2 tag has been added to our HTML. JSX always has to have one parent element for it to understand and compile. To say we wanted to add another div block down here. Our div block was, I don't know, doing more testing. I can't spell. We'll get an error here, and that's because we don't have one parent element, because we're trying to return this div tag and this div. One way to fix this would be to wrap in another tag. Just do div because it's the simplest, most common tag, really. So this will fix our error, but let's say we didn't actually want to add another div tag to our HTML. React fragments. All a React fragment is an empty opening and closing tag, like this. React fragments will make it so that the JSX can get compiled correctly into HTML by grouping a list of children together so that your compiler can understand, but it will not add extra nodes to your HTML. So we look over here, we can see that no other tags were added to our HTML. It's just these two divs. All HTML attributes are also accessible within JSX, but the syntax can be slightly different. Attributes within JSX are always camel-cased. One in particular is class. Instead of having class, it's actually called class name in JSX. This is because class is a reserved keyword within JavaScript. I save this and go to this h1 tag in here. We can see the proper attribute, class, was added. But like I said, any attributes can be added. ID is just lowercase, so there's no need to do camel case because it's just one word. You can see ID is added here. Image tag, source. Source works the same way as the regular source attribute, and so on. Any valid JavaScript expression can be rendered in JSX within curly braces. Say I put curly braces in right here, and I did 1 + 1. We'll now see in our browser 2, And that's because 1 + 1 is a valid JavaScript expression. But say I had a variable that I wanted to output within my JSX. I could do that doing like so. If I call the variable test, and just made the string test. I could also output test, because that is also a valid expression, within these curly braces. You'll see test, and I'll just get rid of this so it doesn't confuse us. You'll see test there. And this is the same with attributes. You can also put JavaScript within those attributes. So here you see that there's strings. However, if I want a class name to be equivalent to this variable up here, I could use these curly braces and call the test variable. You see in our H1 tag, it's still the class of test. Just to show it's working, I'll call this test2. You can see down here, it's test2. One thing that we'll add as well is just a button to show you how onClick works. onClick kind of combines the HTML attribute camel casing and JavaScript. So we can add an onClick here. And typically in HTML, you would add onClick without camel casing. But since we're using JSX, we would write onClick with the camel casing, these curly braces, and we'll just put in a console.log. Testing. So now if we go over to our browser, go to the console section, click the button, we'll see testing. Another thing too is CSS within JSX and rendering components within JSX. And I'm gonna have videos coming out in the future on both of those things. So stay tuned.